think we're just gonna maybe stick with these. I'd wanted to knock the rest of these out, so huzzah!
Do you think it's too late?
Going forward, resist change. Do you see the problem or a challenge?
To stop the expression going forward becoming mainstream? I'm afraid it might be. It's begun to make that transition from being one of those phrases only hateful management-speaking idiots would dream of using, which is fine because it provides another useful way by which hateful idiots can identify themselves to the rest of us, to being just another way of saying from now on. But we don't
Time is a construct.
need another way of saying from now on. We've got one and it was here first and it's better. And if people I like are going to start saying going forward, then I can no longer just write it off as a thing awful people
It does seem a little bit ostentatious as a phrase.
say. I suppose this state of affairs does at least retrospectively justify having fought the phrase in the first place, because the routine adoption of it by non-twats was just the development I feared. But there's only a certain amount of pleasure you can get from saying I told you so. Granted, that certain amount is loads, but still, it's finite. I think what I hate about going forward is that it implies advancement, when it's actually just describing the passing of time. From now on is a colourless description.
Yeah, advancement rather than just change. It's just different than what it was before. Not necessarily better, just different.
At what point and for what foreseeable duration the office canteen will be charging 5 pence for paper towels. Going...
Oh, yeah, nice. I think that's what that one's about. Tissue only 5p or
forward
something.
makes it sound like progress. Brothers, in our ceaseless surge onwards and upwards towards the sunlit uplands of human perfection, another milestone has been passed. Free paper towels, those shameful reminders of humanity's imperfect, unevolved past, are no more. Going forward, paper towels will cost 5 pence. No.
See, I don't know if it would just have adopted... I guess I have heard people who I wouldn't have considered like a middle management type person use that. So I don't know if it had a different meaning or if it's the same meaning, just other people have adopted it, because people use like emotional labor now and they use like all sorts of stupid phraseology. So I don't know if they're just like they've adopted that meaning or if they've changed the meaning and then adopted it. I don't know. Don't know.
Not everything has to sound like a master plan. Change is not always for the better. The future is not always bright. Forward is not always where we're going. We may well be going backwards to our doom, or most likely staying perfectly still while...
Well, technically speaking, I just feel like the reason why the future is because that's the place we're going. The reason why the past is the past is because that's where we're trying to get away from. And the present is kind of the apex, not the apex, the nexus of it all. The center of human inertia.
And now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to have a little cry. It's interesting that there are areas in which we're prepared to concede that personal taste
I don't know what these amorphous things are supposed to be.
is subjective, and areas in which we're absolutely not. I like
There's gnomes inside of it.
bacon, for instance. I think it's delicious. But if we were eating out together...
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think people tend to associate subjectivity with like a thing not being real, which it just isn't. It just means not universally applicable. At least in my mind. Like, it doesn't mean that it's like not a real thing. Obviously it is a real thing. It's just not something that you could apply to everything. It's somewhat unique to the individual or whatever the situation is that you're talking about.
and you were to mention you hate bacon, I wouldn't try to convince you were wrong. I wouldn't...
Well, I guess I'm preempting some, but I think his argument is that why can't we... No, I think he asked that. Why can we accept certain things as being subjective, and why can we not accept other things? Well, that's kind of the issue. Like, gravity is pretty universal as a force of nature. A person liking or disliking bacon is not nearly so universal, right? Right? A person liking a certain color, very subjective, doesn't matter. A person thinking they can, have sex with underage people, that's not so subjective. That's a pretty universal moral code. So I think that there are a lot of things that we think of as universally applicable, and we don't believe that there are exceptions to be made there for subjectivity. Because I think it has to do with the universality or perceived universality of the principle involved. That's my notion.
Insist you order bacon or try to marshal arguments that would convince you of its tastiness. Nor, if you later ordered rhubarb for pudding, would I make any attempt to save you from the hideous...
Rhubarb sucks. Only ever had it once that I remember, and it was not good.
mistake you are about to make, even though I happen to know by personal experiment that rhubarb is revolting. No, I would watch you make your rhubarby bed and proceed to lie in it without lifting a finger to help you. But if, as you were masticating the last hideous, stringy, acidic mouthful, you had...
That's what I remember. It's sour and weird. I think the texture is part of it, too.
And to mention that you don't particularly enjoy the books of Evelyn Waugh, it would be a different story. I
don't know who Evelyn Waugh is. Interesting.
Be aghast at your wrongness, and might well attempt to spring to your aid by trying to forcibly divest you of your wrong opinion. I'd try to convince you you'd read the wrong book of his, or at the wrong age, or with the wrong attitude, or, though I hope I would manage not to say this out loud, with the wrong amount of not being a sense of humorless dickhead. Why should this be? Why can't I accept someone else's taste in books, films, or even politics the same way I can accept their taste in food?
Well, I think an equal part of this has to do with the fact that we perceive some things as being kind of almost integral to our personality a little bit. And so when a person threatens that thing that's integral to your personality, or the foundation of who you are as a person, like some sort of conscientious belief as opposed to just some sort of, artistic or culinary taste, it's very different in the way you perceive that. It's more threatening to who you are as an individual, I guess.
As a fact about who they are, like their height or hair colour. What's the difference between Evelyn Waugh and a bowl of rhubarb? There's a riddle you don't often see.
Well, technically nothing to a chef. A chef might find that very important and might be willing to argue for hours on end about what food is good and in what setting. There are people who are very, very persnickety. Like in the same way you would probably feel about Evelyn Waugh, they would feel that same way about food, actually. Because it's something that's really important to them.
On a lolly stick. And I suppose the answer, not the lolly stick answer, I don't have one. If you have, do by all means put it in the comments, is that actually, if I really think about it, I don't truly accept other people's taste in food as legitimate either. I pretend to, because that's the convention, but actually when someone claims that rhubarb is edible or that bacon is not, the fundamental fascism of the human soul is laid bare because I don't believe them for a second. I don't understand why they're lying or what they hope to get out of it.
Probably lying to themselves because they want to be healthy or some crap.
But I'm used to people telling such lies, and I'm aware it's bad manners to call them out on it. But no, I don't deep down actually admit that it is possible to enjoy eating rhubarb or not to enjoy eating bacon. I mean, come on, bacon. This is a food so delicious, it's been specifically banned by 2 major religions. What greater seal of approval could it have? It's right up there with fornication.
Technically, I'm thinking Islam might have gotten the ban of pork from Judaism. I'm not for sure. Like, Muhammad was very, very involved, like, in that whole scenario. At least in an ideal world, they were supposed to be attached at the hip, but it got very dicey when when the Jews didn't really support his claim to be the prophesied one. Mecca kind of became his stomping ground a little bit after he started getting followers. Very, very interesting sort of history going on there.
You have to admire the marketing department at Marmite. Or, as they would have it, you either have to admire them or despise them. They've created an advertising campaign so powerful it has almost attained the status of a proverb. Not only that, but people, usually awful people, admittedly, but still technically people, are actually
I don't know what Marmite is exactly. From the description, maybe I think I looked it up at some point, but then promptly forgot what it was. But I think it's some sort of spreadable something on like toast or something like that.
prepared to compare themselves approvingly to their product. I'm like Marmite, me, they say. You either love me or you hate me. That's quite an achievement for a toast spread, surely. No one says, I'm like jam. Pretty much everyone likes me, but too much of me makes...
Weirdly, I don't think I actually like jam. And it might have to do with the texture. I don't necessarily mind the flavor so much as just like there's little bits of the berries inside of it or something. Never liked blackberries either, or grapes. Yeah, a bit persnickety sometimes.
You feel sick? Or, I'm like marmalade. Everyone likes me, but not as much as they did in the 50s. Though heaven knows I can think of people to whom both of the above apply. And the thing that's really impressive about the success of the love-hate Marmite dichotomy is that I'm not even sure it's true. Do people either love Marmite or hate it? I mean, some people definitely hate it, no doubt about that. But the people who don't hate it, people like me, don't they generally sort of not mind it? At the most, rather like it? Who are these people who love Marmite? Are they so busy sitting at home gorging themselves on Twiglets that we never see or hear from them? I don't think so. I have a feeling that by conceding the fact that some people dislike it, Marmite have rather brilliantly elevated the people who don't mind it into enthusiasts. Because we have this nagging...
Clever little advertising agents.
Feeling that, as with physics, every action should have an equal...
I should say they moonlight as advertising agents. Their real job is, more infernal.
An opposite reaction. If Marmite...
Sorry, that's a bit extreme.
It is hated, then surely it must also be loved.
There's kind of like a whole genre of industries that we almost see as being like kind of parasitic to the nth degree. I was thinking the other week, IRS is obviously probably one of them. I'm not sure what we were talking about though.
And by a roughly equal number of people.
There was another one. No.
Well, no. And I fear that the people who find they have the need to compare themselves to the famously polarizing yeast extract are making the same mistake. People definitely hate me, they think. I'm loud and selfish and rude and pleased with myself, and I know for certain lots of people can't stand me because they tell me so. This is a bad thing, and maybe I ought to do something about it. But hold on, not so fast. Let me...
Look, I haven't heard that about Marmite, obviously. That's probably a British thing, but you do feel like there are people who just kind of... There would be a type of person who would say, you either love me or you hate me. Yeah, it does feel it could be cope or something like that. I'd heard that about, Steve Jobs, though. It was more like the people he was around or something. Like, he either loved you or he hated you. There wasn't a lot of in between.
Apply the presumably analogous case of Marmite. People hate that as well. But the people who don't hate it love it. I know that for a fact, because the marketing division of Unilever have told me so, and they ought to know.
You wonder what, makes that type of phenomenon, where things like super divisive versus just being kind of either way.
Oh, if anyone does. Therefore, the people who don't hate me, the ones who tolerate me, they must...
I feel like Trump would be kind of in that category, where there's not a lot of people who are just like, he's all right, I guess. There's a lot of people who really, really like him, and there's a lot of people who really, really hate him. I'm not for sure, again, what is it that causes that type of super divisive...
Actually love me. Brilliant. I never need to change my antisocial ways. Of course, you know who really was a Marmite person? Hitler. I mean, some people really hated him, but some people really loved him. That's a historical fact. And I should make it clear, for the benefit of Marmite's lawyers, that I'm...
Just throw that back at the person whenever they say, people either love me or hate me.
I'm not saying Marmite is like Hitler. Strictly speaking, I'm saying it's less popular than Hitler once was.
See, I sometimes, like, I've wondered this before, though. Like, if Hitler was born any other place at any other time in history, would he have been what he was? So maybe the divisiveness of a scenario is not so much in the thing itself, but more in the people who are caught up in a very divisive scenario at the time. So maybe it's less about like kind of the epicenter, or maybe the epicenter is more incidental than you might think with regards to that type of thing.
Some people complain that in Britain we're so standoffish and or repressed that we
It's true.
can't even talk to each other on public transport.
Also true. I don't know.
I think that's a wonderful thing.
I don't know about their public transport, but they do seem like in general to be a very, well, at least the upper class of England, not like the Cockneys or the Irish or Welsh or whatever, but like the ones who have a Oxford accent, like the really posh accent, they feel like they're innately just kind of this, oh, I don't know, like it's kind of their whole shtick.
I sit on a full bus or underground carriage of people sitting together in complete silence, and my heart swells with pride at a culture sophisticated enough to have evolved a convention that acknowledges that chatting with strangers is almost always an unrewarding chore. What a hell we would make of our lives if, on top of having to go to work every day, get stuff done and hold down a job, we also had to worry about making conversation on the way there and back. If our exhaustedness during a Monday journey in or a Thursday journey home were compounded by having to conceal it and ask chirpy questions of an elderly sales executive about her extension. If only we could expand this enlightened attitude to social occasions. Why? At parties or dinners, are you never allowed to sit with your friends? These are the people I know I like.
I might actually go over that again. No, I suppose on principle, the notion of, hey, some people just don't click, that does kind of work. But also, I see the value in trying to meet new people, or even just learn how to talk with people you don't know. It's a useful skill to have. Not to mention the type of lethargy or stagnation that goes along with just hanging out with your little clique of persons. And I suppose, like, on principle, I don't like the notion of cliques, especially when there's no like real foundation for it. If it's just some sort of superfluous, oh, we're the cool kids type bullshit. I'm not overly fond of that whole notion of it.
Invested time and energy into finding people whose company I enjoy and who are able to tolerate mine.
Yeah, so do it once more. Do it one more time. See if there's someone else you can...
Why would I want to gamble on the chance that some perfect stranger also fits into the category?
Well, there's a point, too, to be had that meeting at a party doesn't necessarily mean you have something in common. Like, if you go to an event for blank, then you can talk about blank thing, right? But being into a social gathering is a pretty broad category. Most people either are or would like to be involved in social gatherings. But I think that is some of the beauty of it, too, that you, like, with regards to church, just, shilling that, you meet a lot of people that you otherwise would have very little in common with, and you learn to cooperate with people that otherwise you would have very little in common with. I think that's a good thing, generally speaking. It's a very eclectic assortment of people.
I have a sure bet sitting 3 inaudible places away from me. But dinner parties in particular seem to be designed entirely around the thought, which people who haven't met each other can we make meet each other? So people who already have
I feel like that...
friends are set up on awkward dinner-length mini friendship dates with potential new friends. Why do we do that? It's not as if we set up people who are already married on dates with potential new spouses, even though I bet that would be a hell of a lot more popular.
Again, in settings like that, you have some sort of commonality that links you to each other. You have something... Sorry, I'm not suggesting people do that, but even in that like hypothetical scenario, you would have some sort of commonality that would link you. It's a less broad category of individuals. It's a more bespoke type of thing that you're gathering together to talk about or do. So you get it's a selection bias of sorts. But again, I'm not opposed to the notion, like, I think I disagree with him here. I think the notion of, hey, let's force people to develop some social skills, like, oh, heaven forbid. Heaven forbid.
Obviously, sometimes, especially at weddings or similar, there are the massive bores who no one wants to sit next to, but somebody must. I realise that has to happen. Now and again, you have to throw yourself on the bomb that is Uncle Walter talking about his varicose veins. And I also admit that now and again you spend a pleasant half an hour talking to someone new and interesting. Once in a blue moon, it may even lead to a genuine new friendship. But this benefit surely doesn't
And admittedly, I do not live in England, so I don't know if I would like a party structured perhaps like they do it in England. But in principle, I can appreciate the notion behind it.
Weigh the cost of all the times it doesn't work. I'd happily forego the rare occasions when it works out in order to prevent the tragedy, and it is a tragedy, of two blameless, polite people who don't have much in common, forced to spend the duration of the meal pointlessly trying to ignore that
Again. Or maybe, developing social skills.
fact and boring each other senseless. All because society dictates we can neither sit with the people we like nor just bin out on this and get books out.
Well, these days there's an equivalent to that in that most people would probably just pull out their cell phone. At least in America. I don't know if that's the case in Britain. They seem to be more stuck up over there. So it's probably some sort of social convention where you don't do that.
We are all faced with a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. So wrote Charles R. Swindoll, according to the internet.
It's a nice sentiment in any case.
This enervating sentiment...
There's kind of a notion, actually, that you only ever become as, competent as your predatory element allows you to be. Like, you only advance as far as you have to advance, which I don't think is necessarily true, but there's some truth to it, I think. I think in a lot of ways you kind of need the stick. As much as I like the idea of being able to be, self-motivated, or, the notion of self-metamorphosis, I think sometimes you do need the carrot and the stick a little bit.
is typical of modern business rhetoric. Nothing is bad, a tragedy, a pain in the arse, or a pisser. These things are just opportunities, or at the very worst, challenges. Well, not everything that isn't the way we want it to be is a challenge. Sometimes it's a problem. For instance, there's a lot of talk about the challenge old media like newspapers and TV face from the internet. But it's not a challenge, it's the thing that's killing them.
Probably even more true these days. Well, I guess I don't know. There's still newspapers around.
It's not an exciting, inspiring challenge to bring some interest into the otherwise jaded lives of newspaper editors. It isn't a thrilling opportunity to think outside the box. It's a huge threat that's killing them off and which they wish with all their hearts they didn't have to face. It's
I feel like quite often, something that dies easily, I guess maybe this isn't the case, but sometimes I tend to think that a thing that dies easily, if it breaks easily or if it is destroyed easily, it wasn't much to start with. In this case, that might not be the case, but it does feel like you should allow things to fade in their due time. The notion of trying to hang on to some outdated relic of the past is not, it's unbecoming, put it that way.
not a crossword puzzle.
That's kind of like the reason why I tend to think aging is a bit of a tragedy. It's that on some level, some part of us remains unchanged and as vibrant as ever, but it's in a body that is degrading. Anyways.
It's a leopard. Climbing a mountain because you want to see if you can climb a mountain is a challenge. Climbing a mountain because while you were at work someone put a mountain between you and your house is a problem. And in old media's case, the internet has not only built that mountain, but also placed on top of it old media's mountaineering equipment, heart medicine, and wheelchair. I suppose the point is to encourage positive thinking as a motivational tool. That people are more likely to be energetic and creative about facing a challenge or embracing an opportunity than solving a problem or countering a threat. But is that really the case? Are we so pessimistic we think that as a species we're doomed to founder unless we resort to cheap rhetorical cheerleading?
I think it certainly works. Typically, like inspirational speeches, whatever it is that makes people like those, or most of the time I just don't feel it. Maybe I'm missing some emotional component.
Are we really more likely to focus on a problem if our leaders make it sound like a fun activity rather than a life-endangering menace? I'd like to think we're better than that. I'd like to, but I don't. In my heart, I suspect the challenge mongers are quite right, that the
Challenge mongers. Nice.
reframing works. It stops
Adrenaline junkies is probably the word we would use.
people getting too depressed and listless about things that are basically just awful.
I thought that would maybe be different. I'm not for sure.
Up to a point, anyway. But I imagine even they have a job at one another's funerals. We're here to celebrate the life of Darren Smiley, tireless challenge taker and opportunity grabber. And what an exciting time for him this is, as he is presented with his most exciting challenge to date. To force open his lifeless eyes, reboot his defunct system, kick apart the coffin, and join us at the wake in time for nibbles. If I know Darren at all, I'm sure he's finding the challenge incredibly exciting, and he'll be relishing the chance to demonstrate that rising from the dead is an opportunity that can only be seized by people lucky enough to have died. Rest in peace, Darren. See you in 20.
It's a little bit cynical, but hilarious also.
I'm always irritated. Well, you knew that already. But in this instance, I'm always irritated
I was aware.
when I hear people talk about the Atkins diet, or whatever it's called these days, as if it's an amazing trick, a way to get thin for free. Because you can have all the steak and eggs and cream you want, they say, just not any carbs. Wait, just not any what? Carbs? You mean bread and potatoes and pasta? Where's the just in just not those things, I always think. Those things are great. They then continue shaking their heads, but you'd be surprised how much you find yourself craving carbs.
Oh, is that the keto one they have going on these days? Is that what this... The Atkins diet. I should look it up sometime. 'Cause I feel like keto is the big one these days, and I thought that's kind of in the same vein.
After a while. Well, no, I wouldn't. I know how much I crave them at the moment, while I'm totally allowing myself loads of them. The thought of such cravings intensifies.
I don't really have toast in the mornings. I used to. I tried to mostly cut out bread or whatever. It's just kind of one of those things. It's not good for your teeth. It's not good for... I feel like it maybe helps you gain weight as well, just on principle carbs or whatever.
In circumstances of extended withdrawal, while I'm being presented with a series of foods that traditionally go deliciously with or on them, is not a surprise at all. Oh, you'd be amazed how bucket after bucket of egg mayonnaise makes you fancy a bagel, how attempting to gargle down a cup of jam and butter will make the absence of a slice of toast
Like, why would you... Okay, I think he's being hyperbolic. Never mind, I think he's being hyperbolic.
seem perverse, how a great viscous tub of bolognese sauce will seem weirdly spaghetti-less. Well, no, I wouldn't. But the dieters talk about it as if it's one of those classic genie fooling you with a loophole stories. Oh God, the genie's got me! He promised me I could eat all the meat and eggs I wanted and still get thin. But it turns out I can't have any bread.
See, I feel like this is more subjective than you might think. Because I don't feel entirely like maybe I would, and I sometimes eat other like flour-based products, but quite often I don't eat a lot of bread, I suppose. Maybe that's hypocritical. Maybe I eat more than I should, but like the times I have been kind of without it for a long time, I don't know if I've really noticed that much, but...
Bread. And of course meat and eggs are useless without bread and potatoes. Who would have thought it? I would have thought it. Any fool...
Okay, potatoes, I don't know. Even potatoes, I don't know if I would notice potatoes that much. I like making french fries now and then, but man.
Fool would have thought it. I would have thought. I have never eaten a bacon sandwich thinking for a moment that it was all about the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones bacon. It needs the Steven Spielberg bread and butter behind the scenes, making it brilliant. Bacon on its own is just like watching a load of Harrison Ford.
Also, I just find biting down on sandwiches annoying because it just feels like you're always going to get like stuff stuck in your teeth or whatever. So it's like
Ford interviews. In fact, sometimes I think there's no better food than bread and butter, especially when you remember that the mere application of heat can turn mild-mannered bread and butter into super toast, which is somehow delicious in a whole different way. Certainly, I would defy anyone to eat anything else as much as we eat bread and butter and still find it as delicious as we find bread and butter. Imagine if you had to eat truffles once or twice a day, or caviar. You'd go very quickly from delight to indifference.
it's just strange how the rarity of a thing makes it kind of just desirable in our minds. I don't know.
From there, it would be a short trip to boredom and nausea. But bread and butter, and indeed potatoes, just keep soldiering on, as deliciously welcome today as they were yesterday and will be tomorrow.
It's strange, like there's a whole kind of genre of food that isn't like really over the top delicious. It's just kind of solid. I feel like there's a lot of it. Like chicken is something that like you have all the time, but somehow it's still good. Still good.
In general, the relative deliciousness of foods, once the truly disgusting and pointless things like licorice and celery have been discounted, is
You don't like licorice? What the Harry? Troglodyte.
defined by economics. At one end of the scale are things which are common and unloved, like rice or apples. At the other, the expensive treats, the things that are basically prized.
He doesn't like rice or apples. What? Okay.
Discounted is defined by economics. At one end of the scale are things which are common and unloved, like rice or apples. At
Okay. So he's just saying they're kind of
the other, the expensive treats, the things that are basically prized simply because they're rare and thus pricey. These things are getting an easy ride. If you reverse the availability of chicken and lobster, people would quite like lobster but go mad for chicken. Oysters used to be abundant, and so a working class
interesting.
staple for people who couldn't afford proper food, so were reduced to slurping cold snot from a rock. Then
I don't think I would like oysters, especially raw. I don't know what they like. Is there any cooked version of oysters?
they got rare, and hey presto, they're prized as a delicacy. Conversely, scampi used to be posh, but it isn't that expensive to produce, so quickly slid down the deliciousness scale to pub grub. But then,
That's scampi.
on a scale of deliciousness all of their own, independent of economics, there are the things that we always love, whatever their
See, I would have put chicken in that category, but apparently this jackass is
availability.
too English.
Salt used to be so precious soldiers were paid in it. Now it's so cheap you can buy a sack of it for £1. It makes no difference. We loved it then and we love it now. Pistachio nuts are another one. Pasta. But the
I don't know how I feel about pistachio nuts. I'm not like overly fond of them, but I can see the appeal. They're kind of nice.
king of them all is bread, and his loyal queen butter.
Is it true that pistachio shells are actually poisonous or some crap? I thought there was one type of nut with it. I don't know if it's pistachios. I think it might be something from... I'm not for sure, though.
Long may they rule over us, and confusion to the usurper Atkins. Rape and pillage, rape and pillage. No, that's not a command. Sit down.
What a way to start a video.
It's just that I don't quite understand.
Again, this is made like 8 years ago or something, so, you know. I don't know if it was more edgy back then or not.
And why it is that pillage should take the curse off rape. Because it does, doesn't it? The Vikings raped and pillaged their way through the north sounds a lot merrier than a gang of Norwegian sailors are suspected of a series of rapes in the Sunderland area. Add pillage to
Sorry, it's not funny. It's not funny, but man.
rape, and suddenly it has a certain air of knockabout fun. But pillage is bad enough by itself. It's theft, looting, and arson. Being pillaged would be an awful thing to happen to anyone. What it definitely isn't is a spoonful of sugar to help the rape go down. Nonetheless, put them together, and these two awful crimes apparently cancel each other out. You can pretty much imagine a jolly uncle saying something like, "Where are you boys off to tonight? Out raping and pillaging, I'll be bound." But you wouldn't want one of them to reply, "Well, Not pillaging, anyway.
No, I think some of this just has to do with the fact that there's been, like, probably a lot of caricatures or stories or whatever written. And it feels like once that happens, it kind of becomes a thing that's romanticized. Well, and he also brings us up, like, a lot of the people involved in any of this stuff are now dead and gone and buried for, like, a long time. So our connection to those individuals or what actually happened is kind of severed to the point of, near non-existent. So it's just kind of, I don't know.
I suspect the answer is that it happened a long time ago, so it's funny. Just as all historical events, however bloody and violent, eventually become funny.
Yeah, Genghis Khan. People make jokes about that all the time. That dude killed, like, so many people. I mean, I guess he wasn't incredibly caring with regards to the virtue of women either. So, But still, we make jokes about that crap all the time.
Even the most radioactive material has a half-life. The raping Vikings are funny because we're not picturing rapists, we're picturing Vikings. Cartoon Vikings with ginger beards and horns on their helmets, which they didn't have, by the way. And we're not picturing real victims either. We're picturing buxom carry-on milkmaids who are bored with Anglo-Saxon kings burning their cakes all the time and are quite looking forward to some Norse nookie. And maybe in 500 years' time, we'll imagine the Red Army arriving in East Berlin in exactly the same way.
I don't know.
Or
maybe.
Or sooner. According to secret guidelines from the government, I can reveal that the First World War is due to go hilarious in 2040, with World War II to follow in 2090. Obviously, we've already reached the point where you can set a sketch or even a sitcom in either war, but
I'm just looking at these birds because there's like patterns in its background quite often, so I'm just like paranoidly looking at them.
they're not properly...
No, like Hogan's Heroes was set in World War II, so I feel like World War II is kind of already gone that way. Hogan's Heroes was probably, I guess, in the 60s or thereabouts.
uncomplicatedly funny yet. But at the point when everyone who fought in them, and everyone who remembers anyone who fought in them has died, they will surely become as comic as the Vikings or the Spanish Inquisition. You may think I'm making light of the more recent victims, but I'm not. We're all making light of the less recent ones. People from history had souls and feelings just like us. When Edward II supposedly had a red-hot poker put up his bum, hilarious though it sounds now.
I heard about that. I think they thought he was gay or something, or he was purported to be gay or something, so they thought it was really funny. It's not a... Yeah.
It was a
That's
real
thing.
poker and
That happened.
a real bum. And the raping and pillaging Vikings were essentially a terrorist insurgency.
It's true.
They had to come by sea, which makes them more fun. They wore fancy dress, inasmuch as they were dressed as Vikings. And crucially, they did it all 1,000 years ago. So what history tells us
And they were...
is that if you want...
I wasn't sure if the Vikings were religious fanatics, but I don't think that would have necessarily inspired them. They just wanted stuff, I think. They actually... I think they had... I don't know if they had a hold of the north part of England for a while. I thought they actually did create, like, kind of an actual invasion of... Well, not an invasion, but, like, at some point they actually held some ground in England itself. Not for sure, though.
To get away with an atrocity, try to commit it a millennium ago, and if at all possible, spread a rumour that you were wearing a funny hat.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, there are actually people who probably do something like that, where they try to put distance between themselves and the things they've done by just saying, "Oh, it was way back when I was young and stupid. I was a stupid young person." By the way, this is male grooming, not in the way it's used today. It's literally just...
You may have noticed that these podcasts are generously sponsored, well, self-interestedly sponsored, well, at any rate, sponsored by a brand of men's grooming products, who have decided, for reasons best known to themselves, that their range would profit by being associated with a series of 3-minute rants from a man for whom grooming is self-evidently not a burning issue.
Well, I guess never thought of him as being, like, disheveled, but I wouldn't have thought of him as being kind of a dandy prat either. Just kind of a, nondescript sort of fellow.
Well, I want to talk about men's grooming this week, so let me start by saying, on behalf of my sponsor, that I've never bought any of their products, but I was given a few for free.
Well, just in general, I feel like the notion of grooming is like, it can be taken very far, but there's nothing wrong with like wanting to look good in my mind, or wanting to look presentable.
Free, and they represented the best value for money of any shampoo I've ever used. There.
I think generally that just has to do with like, okay, marginal cleanliness and or, you know, maybe not as disheveled as one might look in general. Like just trying to make yourself look a little bit presentable. But like, I feel like it can be very much taken over the realm of it can be taken over the line of functionality and into the realm of just, oh, you're spending way too much time on this.
The executives of Bulldog may now withdraw to debate amongst themselves whether or not I am worth it. Good. Now then, men's grooming. What? Where has it come from?
That is right, if I remember correctly, right over top of... Give me a second. Alright, there we go.
This idea that men should groom themselves. Surely it used to be the case that for a man to appear to care what he looked like was at least effeminate, if not actually vain.
I still think that it is kind of the case, a little bit. At least in most circles, I imagine. There would probably be exceptions involving Hollywood, but man, they cut the crap out of their faces and do all sorts of random stuff, so... Like, I don't know if they're the ones to be trusted on this point.
It was shaming to smell of body odour, certainly, but no less shaming to smell of an aftershave that you'd chosen to smell pretty, like a girl. There's an advert out at the...
I feel like women maybe would have been the progenitors of some of this in that they wanted men to smell less bad or something like that. So it's all their fault, just like the garden.
Moment, for instance, for a deodorant that comes in a little pocket-sized can. The idea being that when on your
Okay, is this some sort of British thing? I have no idea, like, is this just the symbol of male barbarianism or something?
masculine round, you meet a woman insufficiently impressed by your no doubt magnetic personality and devastating good looks, you can give yourself a quick squirt and the poor girl won't be able to help herself. Now, is this
like Axe body spray.
image not just a tiny bit rehypnol-y? Not a
I had to look that one up. I think it has to do with the drug Rohypnol, which is technically, I believe, a date rape drug. But it has. I think the notion is that it's putting you to sleep, or just kind of knocking you out a little bit, or something like that.
Not only that, but the product is called
Nice adjective, though.
the Lynx Bullet. Bullet, really? For shooting women with from your gun? Though, to be fair, that's only the same pitch perfume advertising has been using for decades. Ladies, this perfume is so effective it's dangerous. One whiff of this...
Forgot that was in there.
With a couple of dainty little squirts when they see a lady. And of course, with a couple of dainty little squirts of perfume for men to carry round with them. To top themselves up, Bullet. It's a little vial of perfume for men to carry round with them. To top themselves up with a couple of dainty little...
I don't think I've ever carried it around with me. Maybe if you're going on like a trip to somewhere, you would take deodorant, but
squirts when they see a lady. And of course, the more feminine
maybe that's different in Britain.
a product is, the more masculine and butch the companies have to make it seem. Bullet, Mach 3, Bulldog.
That's actually probably true.
But however much you market these things as if they were spaceships or warp drives, they're actually pampering products. Razors, for instance, are all advertised by how science-defyingly smooth they can make your face. But smooth isn't manly, it's girly. They're competing about which of them can make your face girliest.
It's coming from a person who's clean shaven, just pointing that out. A little bit hypocritical there.
Buy the Gillette Tomahawk for the closest shave so your face can be more like a girl's face. No, don't buy that. Instead, girlify your face with Wilkinson Sword's new man's girl.
It's strange how that whole thing, because I feel like beards have kind of come back in these days, at least in America. I don't know what's going on in England, but the way things change, the way like, I tend to think that gender roles aren't, they're not like absolute. You can have a lot of stuff shifting around, but they tend to be intuitive, at least on a very basic level. But within that, there's a lot of like variability that can and does happen with regards to what is manly or what isn't. And it maybe has to do with media or stories or just really popular characters in society that start trends or something like that. I'm not for sure, though. I think that would be some of it.
Curling rod. I look forward to the inevitable day when they start selling other providers of softness and comfort this way. Armchairs, for instance. Introducing the new Cozytron 5000. Finally, your ass will conquer the armies of discomfort with the softest armchair invented by science.
It'd be funny, like, just an idea, but if they sometime got, like, this type of thing read in one of those, like, I don't know, WWE announcer voice type things. Or the type of, like, voice they sometimes have on trailers. Just have them read off the most inane, weird phrases.
The first cushion makes you comfy. The second cushion makes you comfier. But the revolutionary new third cushion transports you to a snugness you never dreamt possible. The Cozytron 5000. Breaking the frontiers of snugglydom.
Here we go. Last one in the box.
All right. Fair warning, this one is going to be a bit blue. There's no swearing in it, but it's off colour, near the knuckle and close to the bone. The knuckle bone, presumably. So if you're watching this because you enjoyed the one about the importance of good spelling, for instance, or the one decrying the decline in common courtesy, this might be a good time to stop watching. About now-ish. All right? Still here? Right then. Necrophilia. Told you so. A stand-up
Shocking.
comedian told me the other day that when he really wants to shock, necrophilia is his go-to taboo.
Well, I guess I see the taboo. I guess I'd never really thought of it as being a taboo maybe before watching this. Like, I don't know if I would ever even have heard the word. Maybe once on, like, Big Bang Theory or something like that, but it's not really something that comes up that often. I think it's probably, well, there's kind of a, not unlike pedophilia, there's kind of a window of opportunity there, which very quickly goes away. But in principle, I think it has, the notions about necrophilia would have, I don't know exactly where it would become a thing. Like, as a taboo, that is. Maybe I don't have the initial reaction that most people would have. I don't think it's a good idea. Not for sure.
Audiences for whom gags about paedophilia, incest and rape are old hat, who are finding all his Joseph Fritzl and Baby P material a bit stale, really perk up when he mentions the love that dare not, and for 50% of its practitioners cannot, speak its name. This seems very odd. No one's suggesting that a taste for humping corpses is something that looks good in a Lonely Hearts ad. Then again, it hardly needs to. But isn't it essentially harmless? So
that's kind of the thing. It does seem like on the face of it to be essentially harmless. But the reason why, again, I don't know if I have the same visceral reaction that people have, and maybe that's my own flaw, some sort of selective blindness with regards to, I don't know, some sort of thing that I'm not seeing, emotional truth that I'm incapable of perceiving. But I think one of the issues is that, the notion would be that all action involves interaction, so you can't act like you're doing one thing and getting one result. You're doing probably multiple things and getting a whole range of results out of that. So the notion of legalizing, cannibalism or something like that, I mean, the body's dead. Why does it matter if people eat it? Well, in part, I think it's because of the people giving a good send-off to the corpse of their dearly departed. It helps them maybe reconcile with stuff. It helps them let go. I think that's part of it. So it's in part for the people who are still alive, who remember this person, and who want to see them have a nice, peaceful burial. But apart from that, the fact that you're legalizing cannibalism is also going to involve maybe the creation of an industry around that, or people getting to the point where they're like, hey, well, I like eating people. Maybe I could take matters into my own hands with regards to the supply of meat I want. Like, it's not like you just, again, you don't do one thing and get one result. There's a whole range of results.
Certainly compared to those other taboos, it seems like a victimless crime. Surely it makes no sense that people weirdly wanting to have sex with what are essentially inanimate objects should be deemed more horrific than their wanting to do it with other humans or indeed animals.
Again, it's not just that. I feel like that's the case. Like, it's not just I want to have sex with an inanimate object. There's probably STDs that would also get involved. It's a lot of different stuff. It feels like the notion that it wouldn't bleed over into other parts of society would probably not be the case. I feel it could be impossible for it not to have effects on other stuff.
Animals that aren't up for it. Is it just that people find necrophilia the most incomprehensible of sexual perversions?
That's probably part of it too.
Deep down, maybe more of us than care to admit it can actually imagine the temptation of a sexy sheep to a lonely goat herd, tired of goats, a long way from human company. But the fact that it's easier to...
I think there are stereotypes with regards to some of the classes in England. Not classes. I don't know. There's just stories about some of them and their animal husbandry.
Understand doesn't mean it's not worse to terrorize a sheep than violate a useless object. Once you're dead, the question of whether anyone has their wicked way with you seems like the least of your problems. Because really, you've only got one problem.
That's kind of the point. I don't think it's because of the person who's dead. I don't think I would care that much at that point, obviously. But I think it's for the people who are still alive. That it's a good idea if they can, have a nice resolution to that person's life. It allows us to let go.
And it's a biggie. What I'm saying then is let's get ourselves organised and end this taboo. Of course, no one should be allowed to get jiggy with a body the former inhabitant of which wouldn't have liked the idea, but there must be plenty of people like me whose attitude, once all the useful organs have been harvested, would be, well, I'm not using it, help yourself. So all it would take is an extra box to tick on the organ donor card. Once we've taken out your kidneys, liver and lungs and stuffed the resulting space with sawdust, do you or do you not have any objection to a couple of perverts having a go on you while you're fresh?
I might cut this one out. It's a little bit goofy.